Drip Martin Hale was 35 and prided himself on being ordinary. He lived alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment on the third floor of a weathered brick complex. He was punctual, quiet, and polite in a way that made him forgettable. His co-workers at the insurance office often struggled to recall if he'd been at after-work drinks the previous Friday. He always had been sitting at the edge of the group, nursing one beer, nodding at the right moments. Routine was Martin's lifeline. The same cereal each morning, the 7:10 bus every weekday, lunch at his desk, ham sandwich, apple, black coffee. He liked the predictability, the sense of control. It kept the world simple, manageable. That was before the faucet began to drip. It started one Tuesday evening, a sound so faint he almost missed it. Plink. A droplet fell from the tap into the stainless steel sink, echoing in the small kitchen. He frowned but shrugged it off. Leaky faucets happened. He called the landlord tomorrow, but by the end of the week, the sound was sharper, more persistent. Plink, plink, plink. He tried to ignore it, but it seemed to follow him around the apartment. Even in the bedroom, with the door shut, he could hear it. Steady, deliberate, a rhythm that began to feel intentional. Martin stuffed a towel into the sink to muffle the sound, but it worked for an hour. Then the dripping returned, somehow louder. He twisted the knob shut as hard as he could, but the droplets kept forming. He wrapped duct tape around the faucet, layering it until the metal disappeared beneath silver strips. Still, in the silence of night, the drip continued. He turned off the water supply entirely, yet the sound never stopped. Sleep became impossible. He lay awake until morning, staring at the ceiling, every plink driving into his skull like a nail. He began arriving late to work, unshaven, eyes bloodshot. His co-workers noticed now, but only to exchange whispers about how tired, how strange he seemed. Then came the dreams. In them, he floated in a vast, dark reservoir, the water icy against his skin. The sound of dripping surrounded him, but he could never find the source. Sometimes he dreamt of hallways lined with doors, each dripping steadily from above, forming long trails of rust-colored stains. He always woke gasping, his mouth dry, his sheets damp with sweat. By the second week, Martin couldn't tell where the dreams ended and waking life began. He began carrying cups of coffee into every room, desperate for distractions. He'd crank the TV volume high enough to rattle the windows. Yet beneath every noise, the drip persisted. Plink, plink, plink. One night, driven by exhaustion, Martin tore the faucet from the sink. He gripped it with both hands, yanking until the metal pipe snapped. Water sprayed violently, soaking him, but even as he stumbled back, laughing in relief, he realized the dripping sound hadn't stopped. It was coming from the ceiling. A dark stain spread across the plaster above him. Slowly, a droplet swelled, then fell onto his cheek. It was cold, metallic. When he touched his face, his fingertips came away red. Blood. Martin staggered back, horror twisting in his gut. He stared upward, waiting for another drop, but none came. The ceiling was dry. The stain was gone. He sat on the floor, trembling, convinced he was losing his mind. The next morning, he went to confront his landlord. The man, a balding retiree named Mr. Gallagher, listened impatiently as Martin explained about the dripping, the stain, the blood. "There's nothing wrong with the plumbing," Gallagher said. "Building's old, sure, but the pipes are sound. You're hearing things." Martin started to argue but stopped when he saw the landlord's expression. Not irritation, fear. "Look," Gallagher muttered, lowering his voice, "you don't want to start poking around in this place. Apartments are cheap for a reason. Take my advice and just let it be." Martin tried. For a few nights he tried. He left the apartment, wandering the city until dawn, sleeping on benches, drinking in all-night diners just to escape the sound. But no matter where he went, he woke at the same moment, the echo of dripping water in his ears. The sound wasn't in the pipes, it was in him. By the third week, Martin stopped going to work. His fridge was empty. His apartment smelled of mildew and stale sweat. He no longer shaved, barely ate, spent hours standing in his kitchen, staring at the empty sink, listening. Then late one night, the drip changed. It became faster, urgent. The sound filled the apartment like a chorus. He spun in circles, convinced he'd see the walls bleeding, the floor flooding, but everything looked normal, except the bathroom door. It was closed. He hadn't closed it. The dripping was louder inside. Hands shaking, Martin pushed the door open. The sink and tub were dry. But from the mirror, drops began to fall. Not from the frame, but from the glass itself, as though the reflection were leaking. Each drop hit the counter with a sharp plink. In the mirror, Martin's reflection smiled. He ran. Neighbors later reported hearing him screaming in the hallway, pounding on their doors, babbling about water, about mirrors, about something inside the walls. When police arrived the next morning, his door was ajar. The apartment was empty. No sign of Martin, no blood, no broken faucet. But in the kitchen sink, a single puddle shimmered, rippling as though disturbed. And from somewhere deep in the walls, faint but steady, came the sound of dripping water. Plink, plink, plink.